In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Daily Memphian Tigers podcast. I'm Frank Bonner, the Tigers football beat writer, and I'm joined by my guy, John Martin, as always, the Tigers sports columnist. We've got some football news to get into after what happened last week, but first, don't forget to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also listen to these episodes and read all about our Tigers coverage on DailyMemphian.com. And so, John, after what was a disappointing weekend for Memphis football, the way that game played out, I mean, the UTSA was throwing touchdowns to whatever tight end they had on their roster. Still couldn't get a yard on fourth downs. Just what did you make of the whole ordeal?
Well, I thought they'd kind of been flirting, the last several weeks, with an L, right? It was getting pretty serious. Things were getting pretty hot and heavy. They had dodged a loss to Charlotte. They had dodged a loss to North Texas, even though they were trailing in the fourth quarter of both those games at home. So, they were kind of, they were definitely flirting. Things were getting serious. And on, Saturday, they brought it home to the parents, right? They brought that loss home to the parents. And again, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a surprise if you've been watching this Memphis football team. Like and I will say, at least in that game, like they at least did finally play with a little bit of, fervor at the beginning of the game. Like I felt like, okay, they got some urgency. They jumped out of that double-digit lead, and then I think they were really just let down by their defense in this game. And again, that too, we talked about this even I think going back to the Navy game. Like, man, this defense is, when they've seen any competency this year, they have just let go of the rope. They've just not been good at all. Propped up by Troy, North Alabama, and Florida State, and basically every other game, they've just been so mediocre to bad. Not maybe as bad as last year, but still not good enough, I think. And that's what you wanted them to be and hope they'd be, and they have not been that. So I'm not altogether surprised. I just think it's just, again, based on the way they've played, it's just very disappointing that the season has been sort of boiled down and reduced to just kind of another year. Which this season was not supposed to be that. This season was supposed to be AAC title game, pick to win. Maybe, I didn't put this on them, but maybe they were picked by a lot of people to go to the playoff. And unfortunately, it just kind of felt like this season never even really got off the ground.
Yeah, before we get into like the big picture, just keeping at the game, I wonder, and whether you had Demir or not, you should have found a way to win that game.
Right.
But I wonder if Demir doesn't injure himself on a touchdown celebration, is that game different for them? I mean, he had, 6 catches, 142 yards, and 2 touchdowns in basically a quarter and a half.
Yeah.
And so when you look at, obviously Memphis went into that game looking to feed the ball to Demir, and it was working.
Yeah.
And then we've talked about how in-game adjustments isn't necessarily the strong suit.
Right.
And so when you lose your guy that you were planning on, basically riding you home, it looked like it kind of stagnates the offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a loss for sure, but I also, I mean, that's one thing. It's one part of it.
Yeah, it's just one part.
I would definitely say it's a part of it, but I'd also say, your predictability on offense is just a killer. Like, I mean, you had 2 4th-and-1 plays, and you ran the same damn play both times. And by the way, UTSA happens to be, 6th in the country against the rush?
Yeah, and so I figured going into that game like Memphis wasn't going to light it up on the ground, but they were also one of the worst in the country passing defense.
Right.
So I thought that
yeah, and that's one where okay, it's 4th and 1, drop a bootleg, drop something where you're going to catch them on their heels a little bit, because they were not going to give you that yard. I think they just know Brandon Thomas, obviously, and he's been that guy for them this year in terms of short yardage. I mean, they've always kind of leaned on him, and they didn't show enough creativity on offense, and then they couldn't stop anything on defense. Those 2 4th-and-1 stops really changed the game, I felt like, because Memphis had some real momentum. They were kind of handling business. and then they just kind of let UTSA crawl back in it, and then dominated the whole second half.
Yeah, and I heard, obviously I listened to the radio and everything in terms of.
Appreciate that, man. You didn't say my show, but I assumed. He might not be talking about my show, which we'll handle that after the podcast.
Well, I got to keep it a Daily Memphian Tigers podcast. I'm not gonna throw your show up.
Oh, you can't, not gonna give me any free promo.
Yeah, right. I mean, John Martin's got enough promo as it is, right? I mean, if you want to listen to Tigers football, listen to the Tigers podcast. You can listen to John Martin on here. But the conversation about the season, right? Obviously, the goalpost this year, the college football playoff was the next year cherry on top. But the goalpost this year was supposed to be a conference championship, at least making it to the conference game.
Yes.
And it looks like as of now, mathematically they're still in it, but most likely they're
over.
Yeah,
they're going to need a miracle.
I mean, you need a lot of different things to happen.
Yeah. What do you need, by the way? You need Tulane to beat Navy, or Navy to beat, what do you need?
So you obviously need Memphis to win out, which would be a loss to Tulane. Tulane needs another loss.
Right.
But it can't be Navy because and so they need to beat.
But then you need Navy could lose again. Navy could lose again, and then they could beat Tulane, and you could beat Tulane, right?
No, because then Navy would win the head-to-head because Navy would have wins over Tulane and
you have
Memphis.
2 losses.
So Navy can't beat both of the teams that it's tied with. And then also, then it gets real dicey because what's going to happen, North Texas also has 2 losses. Then you throw in all these other teams. And so it's mathematically they're still.
It would have been so much simpler if it just beat UTSA. All they would have to do is beat Tulane, and they're in.
And then you have a situation where,
college football rankings would come in, right? If Navy lost to Tulane.
To Tulane, yeah. And then Memphis
now it still was a long shot. But now
it was a 3-pointer. I don't think it was a long shot.
That was not a 3-pointer. That was like a half-court buzzer.
Now it's a long shot.
Now it's you're down 6 with 10 seconds. I mean, if we're gonna take this to basketball, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I mean, how do you obviously the season will ultimately be looked as you didn't get the job done in terms of the conference championship. But how do you evaluate this year in terms of broader Memphis football program? Because on one hand, you didn't get to, this was supposed to be the year and it wasn't.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, mathematically, Memphis is still in a situation where it could win 11 games.
Yeah.
And so how do you...
Including the bowl, obviously.
Yeah, including the bowl, right? But 11-game season, whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a fair question. And I think it's probably the question that the administration over there is kind of grappling with as well, because they have to try to make sense of this thing and try to, evaluate. It's not good enough. It's not good enough because you have the sort of paper, which is, on paper, we won, they're probably going to be 9-3. And then they're probably going to have a chance at 10 with the bowl, just like last year, right? So on paper, you look at that and you're like, man, that's really good for Memphis. But then you open the hood, right, like you would, and you kind of look underneath, what's under the hood. And the answer, if they finish 9-3 with a presumed loss to Tulane, is their best win is North Texas at home, and every other win was against a sub-500 team or an FCS team. That's not impressive. That's with the resources that Memphis has, with the team that they were bringing back. That was expected. I mean, you're supposed to beat sub-500 teams, especially in your league, and to finish out of the race, I mean, you're woefully behind. You're finishing in like the middle of the pack right now in the AAC. You're like 4th, maybe 5th. We'll see. I think it's a massive disappointment for Memphis. And now, my partner on radio, as you know,
this is what I was referring to.
Yeah. I mean, he wants to, make a change. And while I understand what he means, while I understand this is again falling short, his time at Memphis has definitely. I'm talking about Ryan Silverfield. He definitely did not take the baton and advance. If this were an Olympic, 4x100, right, a relay race, Mike Norvell handed him a baton. And Ryan Silverfield's tripping and falling all over the track, right? He's not even going to be able to hand it off. That's just the fact of the matter. Mike Norvell, like Usain Bolt, handed it off. We're kind of tripping and falling. Now, be that as it may, you can't fire Ryan Silverfield at Memphis for winning 9 games. Like, it's just not happening. Because A, the history of Memphis does not really allow you to do that. And B, what respected coach or coordinator is going to leave their situation to come to a place, right, that fires you if you win 9 or 10 games? Nobody.
Mind you, 10 games last year was a top 5 season in terms of winning
Absolutely.
wins.
Absolutely.
And so like you're essentially going, you're talking about firing a coach for reaching one of the best win records in
I mean, so look, again, that's not on the table, but if he comes back next year with a new team and all that, and he underperforms, I do think it'd be on the table then. Because then you're talking about 6 years, you had 2 sub 500 records in the AAC, and then we're probably saying that he's if he underperforms next year, we're probably saying sub 500 again. That'd be 3 sub 500 years in 6 years of AAC play. Then I think you could make a move, but you couldn't make a move until he has another year like that one. And so I don't suspect they'll even consider anything like that.
And so, but when you're let's say Memphis does win 10 games this year, right? Let's
including
assume,
the bowl.
Let's assume they lose to Tulane and win a bowl game.
Yeah.
The way that the season makes you feel, because that would essentially be the same record as last year.
Right.
Would last year be viewed as more of a success than this year would be?
Yeah, for sure. Because your expectations were, you weren't picked to win the AAC last year, I mean, you were right there in it against SMU. You lose, but you're right there in it. Same with Tulane, you're right there in it. But the expectations were just a little lower, I think. Kind of played out the same way in that, like, you're having to kind of outscore everybody. You're kind of having to hold on in the fourth quarter. But the difference is that you were not picked to win the league last year, and you were picked to win the league this year. And not only did you not win the league this year, you didn't even come close. You weren't even in the discussion. You lost at the first opportunity, right? It's like I was watching the state of Georgia last night. I'm like, damn, just no chance. Just flat line from the start. That's kind of how it feels with Memphis football. It's like you start the conference year 0-1, you never even had a chance to get the season off the ground. So I would definitely say that this season would be like, last year you come off of it, you're like, all right, we didn't win any of the big games, but like they beat Iowa State. You got something to build on. Everybody's coming back.
You won the offseason, essentially.
Yeah, you definitely won the offseason. And everything lined up perfectly, and next year that will not be the case. Everything will not be lining up perfectly in the offseason.
Which is why, like, obviously the bar was clear for this season. The bar was the conference championship. I wonder what the bar will be next year when you don't have a Seth Hennigan. And you don't have the continuity in that offense that you've had for the last 4 years, whatever. Who knows if Hill is going to be starting as a true freshman? You still got Aronson Maiden there. They may pull somebody out of the portal.
Yeah, they gave Maiden a snap, and that was a disaster.
Yeah,
that was a mess. Like, okay, we're gonna get him out of there.
I looked down and I looked up, and I'm like, wait. That's not Seth out there, but luckily, next play Seth throws a touchdown.
I know, but can we give that brother a chance to be successful? Like, we put him out there, and everybody in the world knows what he's about to do.
Yeah. I mean, it was. He got to see the field, so that's
exactly. I guess he burned his red shirt, man.
You get 4 games. So
you get. Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So nothing.
That's right. Football is different than college basketball.
No harm, no foul. Right? Like it's everything. Everything is everything on that. But I am curious to see that. We talked about the excitement that fans had in the offseason and whatnot. It still didn't turn into butts in the seats.
No, it didn't.
And I don't honestly, if Memphis beat Navy and they beat UTSA and they beat 9-0, I'm still not sure that you would see a difference.
Well, it depends, Frank, on where they would be in the college football conversation, like the playoff conversation. Like if they were where Boise is right now, there would be, right? If you're right there with Boise.
But they would most likely be where Army is right now. Or not necessarily, but like they would still be below Boise.
Boise lost though.
To Oregon.
Yeah, but if you're undefeated and they're not, I think there's an argument to be made that you're ahead of them. I'm not saying that's for sure, but
Army's undefeated and they're all the way down at 25.
Yeah, but they haven't even played a Power 5 team, right? I mean, Memphis would at least say we on the road, we won.
Oh yeah, they beat FSU, right? So yeah, that would.
Yeah, even though FSU stinks,
it's still
a road Power 5 win.
But even so, I don't. And you've been in this market way longer than I have, obviously. But to be honest with you, I am not all that confident in the Memphis football fan base showing up no matter how good of a season they're having. And so when people say, oh, this is why you don't show up and you know, whatever, I don't think you would have showed up even if they did beat every game.
I mean, first of all, it's been, you know, 5 years since they've had an objectively good season, which was Mike's last year.
And I wasn't here, obviously.
Yeah, and then you had Ryan's first year was COVID, and so who knows with what that would have been. But it's just been so long since they had, you know. But I don't think Norvell, you know, maybe there were some years where they averaged high 30s under Norvell, but it wasn't like 45 or 50, you know, or anything like that. I mean, the barrier for entry with Memphis football fans has always been insanely high. Now, we talked about it last week when they played 2 out of 3 weeks. It wasn't back-to-back. It was 2 out of 3 home games. They had Ole Miss, which was, I think, 60 sellout, basically. Then they had Tulane on Halloween, which doesn't count because it's on Halloween to me. And that was 30,000. That was paltry. But then the next week they came back against Navy and had 55,000. And I think that was on a weeknight. So when they are 8-0, but it takes that. Yeah. You can't be 6-2. You can't be even 7-1.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in terms of that discussion, in terms of like, what's going to get 50,000 people out? It's one of two things. It's an SEC team that's nearby that's going to bring 10,000 fans, right? Or it's 7-0, 8-0, 9-0 when people think that, oh my gosh, this could be the best season ever.
Now, obviously, you know, college football coaches and even the players at this point, you know, they're professionals, right? They're gonna still play their hearts out in the last couple of games and play for another, you know, top winning record or whatever. But I just wonder how much was deflated out of that locker room when you look up and you see, like, because after you lost to Navy, you're still in it.
Yeah,
I know you still like it was a long shot or whatever, but one loss, still, I mean, Navy just lost to Rice the same day, like if you lost to UTSA.
Exactly.
But after that UTSA loss, you're looking at the standings and you're like, man, this is probably another year where you're essentially out of it.
Yep.
And you're playing for, you know, the wins, but this was supposed to be where you were supposed to be playing for everything.
Exactly.
And so, like I said, I don't think that locker room is mailing it in at all. I'm not trying to say that. They're going to compete how they always have. But you have to look up and feel deflated.
For sure. I think it's a very fair question about their psyche because you go from, you know, again, this was supposed to be sort of this everything year. You take just a totally demoralizing loss to UTSA, who had nothing to play for, and then you got to go play Rice at home, right? And Rice
at 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock tip-off on a Friday.
At 8 o'clock on a Friday, and Rice is feeling good again. Rice beat Navy. They got a new coach.
They beat the 2 teams that beat you.
That's insane. They beat UTSA? Yeah. No, they did?
Yeah, I'm like 99% sure that they beat UTSA. I
know they beat Navy. I was watching the Navy game. I didn't know that about UTSA. But I guess it makes sense because UTSA was having a horrible year. I mean, Rice looks totally...
Yeah, 29-27, they beat UTSA on
that's
October
right,
12th.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, E.J. Warner's back in the lineup, you know. I think Bibb's going to have a hard time. I think Rice is going to have success. I mean, this opened 10.5. It's down to 9. I think that's a big reason why. Is like, again, like my logic with Memphis football is every time they see a competent quarterback and a half-decent offense, like they tend to struggle. And so that's what they're getting in Rice, you know. And we'll see if Zeno's out there for UAB next week. But yeah, look, I expect it to be an uncomfortable game. You know, I mean, I think Rice will have success moving the football, and it'll probably be one of those games that's probably one score, which is kind of where Memphis always lives, win or loss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised at that, right, in terms of the closeness of the games, especially not with North Texas, even Charlotte or even UTSA if they would have won a close game. Because if you look at the last 3-4 years, that's just what it always been, whether they lost.
Has every game this year been a one-score game?
No, not every game this year. I mean, they beat
okay, we're taking out Troy and North Alabama. Has every other game been like within 8, win or lose? I think it has.
I think there was a game that was not.
Okay.
All
right.
Let's see. Well, Florida State
one score, right? What was that, 8?
Yeah, 8. They lost to Navy. Oh, Middle Tennessee. That's the game. Middle Tennessee was 24-7.
And USF.
USF.
Yeah. But that was. But still,
no, the reason why you think that is because the last 3 have been, so the last,
month.
What? Yeah, has been one-score games. But that's typical.
That's fine if you win. I mean.
Yeah, of Memphis football. They're going to be in a dogfight, whether they're
They don't run up the score, bro. They do not run up the score.
Yeah, and so that's just. But if you're winning.
Exactly.
Cares?
No, it's exactly right. So we were saying about a little bit about Memphis basketball last year before it all came apart. It's like they struggled against Austin Peay. They barely beat Austin Peay. They barely beat, they win or lose. Like, it's only a problem when you lose.
And when you're facing it, I know UTSA's record was not good, but when you're facing a UTSA team that is top in the country in run defense, and I had put in my preview that they were top in the country in forced fumbles, and I had projected that they were going to get a forced fumble, and they did at the wrong time with Rock. Like when you're facing a team that can put you in situations when your back is against the wall and you make a mistake.
Yep. And the coach did a great job during the week, talking up Memphis and just basically like saying, basically that was a message to his guys, right? Like, he's getting them up for it. He did a great job.
Yeah, the whole NIL
he did a great job. He did a great job, man. I mean, kudos to him. I mean, that's part of the game, right? Part of the game is, all right, my season's gone to hell in a handbasket. I'm not going to, UTSA was picked 3rd. They're a disappointment. Or 2nd.
Yeah, they were 2nd.
They were picked 2nd. That's amazing. They were picked 2nd, and their season's gone to hell in a handbasket. So he's like, all right, how can I motivate my players to get up for this game? Boom. I'll say that Memphis makes 6 times more than NIL, and I'll get everybody fired up.
Now you're in your locker room talking about, what, blah, blah, blah. And
you guys make all the money. You guys don't make nothing. Let's go show them what we,
Yeah, the optics of the timing of that was
it was very intentional.
Was ideal for UTSA. And then they come out and win the game.
And so perfect.
Yeah, and so but
Silverfield got to say something about Rice, man. He got to say they got better grades than us or something, bro.
No, you can't. No, because then you're putting your guys down.
I know, but we got to do.
You just got to go out and win the game. Is what you just got to do. And I do think. Their grades.
Rice got better ACT scores.
Nah,
man.
You can't say that. I mean, I think they'll be fine against Rice. I mean, they have no choice, right? They have no choice.
I guess, man. I guess they don't have a choice. Only thing I would say is that if they lose, I hope Silverfield has a different line because he's starting to say the same things after every loss. He's like, I want this to hurt. He said that against Navy, and he said it again against UTSA. I'm like, dog, we got to come up with a new one,
I mean, well, you're just hoping that you're not in those. Like you were only supposed to be using that line once because you weren't supposed to have more than one loss.
Like, what's he gonna say if they lose too late? I want this to hurt. He can't say that again. You have a different one.
I don't think you can tell it. I mean, college coaches they'll say the same line over and over if that's what they.
It's not working though, man. They weren't hurting enough clearly, So we got to come up with a different setting here. But yeah, hopefully he won't have to find one for Friday night.
Yeah. And then obviously. Basketball season is kicked off. I know you and Parth are ready to talk about that Missouri game, so I'll go ahead and kick it over to our Memphis Tigers basketball beat writer, and he and John can chop it up about Penny Hardaway and what he's got going.
All right, Frank, thanks a lot. Like he said, my name is Parth Upadhyaya. I'm the Tigers beat writer here at the Daily Memphian, and I'm joined by John Martin to talk some Tiger hoops. John, finally got some real basketball to discuss, basketball that matters, and a game that will count toward Memphis's body of work and its eventual postseason resume.
Yeah.
What were your first thoughts, early takeaways from what we saw on Monday night in Memphis's 83-75 win over Mizzou?
Yeah. Is it who is it? Charles Dickens?
Okay, yeah, I'm following.
Great Expectations. You familiar with that? It was the
I'm not.
But
I do know who Charles Dickens is.
I think we rated this issue a little earlier in the season. You were not familiar with Shakespeare, and now you're telling me you're not.
I know who Shakespeare is.
No, because I I said all's well that ends well, and you said you were not familiar.
It's in your column, yeah.
You said
it was in one of your columns.
You said you were not familiar, but this is Charles Dickens, and this is all's well. Excuse me. It's the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Just invert those, right?
There you go.
Invert those. It was the worst of times in that first half, and then it became the best of times. I think that's great expectations. Natalie, you'll have to correct me on that one if I'm wrong, and I know you certainly will. We got real literature buffs in this building. But I certainly do think if they could channel what they did in the second half. Oh, we have a correction.
That was a tale of two cities.
A tale of two cities.
Charles Dickens.
Look at me. But it was Charles Dickens. But it was not great expectations. It was a tale of two cities. You got the author
right, yeah.
It was a tale of two cities. I want to apologize to all our audience here for getting that wrong.
Apologize to Charles.
Yeah, no, Charles, I flubbed that with my guy. And Natalie, thanks for fact checking. We have the best fact checkers in the business here. But yes, a tale of two cities, a tale of two halves, if you will. But if they could channel the second half, and they could, I'm not saying that they're gonna score 51 every half, right? I think they're probably not. But if they could just channel that intensity, that press, that effort, I think they're going to win some games. Maybe ones that they're not supposed to, even potentially. But it's got to be that as opposed to what we saw in the first 20 minutes.
For sure. And I think at least one concern I have is with 9 scholarship players available, obviously no Tyreek Smith, and I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later. But with just 9 bodies to work with, can you hit that button for 40 minutes if you're Penny? Not really, right? You got to be kind of more diplomatic about when you're employing that press.
That's well said. And I think you can do it for 15. It doesn't have to be 40 minutes of hell. It's not Nolan Richardson, It doesn't have to be that. But Dennis Gates talked about it. It flipped the game when he went with that press. When Penny utilized the press second half, said he basically viewed it as 2 different games. And so maybe you go to it a little more in the first half. You kind of sprinkle it in throughout the game, see if it'll flip some possessions for you, steal a couple here and there, and just be, like you said, diplomatic about where you use it. But I just thought that was probably the most effective press I've seen. That's the first game of Penny's time at Memphis that I can remember a press actually winning him a game.
I don't know about that. You think so?
I think the press absolutely won him the game because Missouri.
I think 2 seasons ago, there was games where the press
I can't just remember
bailed them out late.
It might have. I just don't remember it flipping a game quite like it did in this one. There could be others that I'm missing, but and he's used the press before. I'm not saying he's never.
For sure.
But in terms of just the sheer impact, like, okay, why did the game turn? It was because of the press. Because Missouri started to get uncomfortable. They couldn't bring the ball up. They were turning it over. They were rushed. And so, yeah, and I thought, Baraka Okoji was big in that. And that's why you brought him in, because he's a really good on-ball defender.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's the goal, is that you have to be, you have to use some discretion, but clearly I think Memphis has some upside there.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's like the shots, once the shots started falling, Memphis was in really good shape, because then you got Missouri having to get the ball out of the net, and you've got time all of a sudden, right? You've got time to set up your press defense. So it's one of those things, like what comes first? Does the intensity on defense come first, or does the shot making come first? I want to say it's the intensity, kind of setting the tone early, which is what you alluded to earlier. But obviously shooting 57.7% in the second half certainly helps.
Yeah, that definitely did help. They got to the foul line quite a bit. The shots were just much higher percentage in the second half. I don't feel like there were that many threes off the top of my head.
They shot 6 in the second half.
They shot
20 for the
total.
game, so 14 in the first half, 6 in the second.
Yeah, so you really flipped the strategy there. I mean, they were good adjustments. I think Penny kind of identified that they weren't really the big got in foul trouble there, right? Gray got in foul trouble, so he was kind of on and off the floor, and PJ just kept getting downhill. He kept getting to the rim and getting foul calls. I mean, I don't know if there was a possession in the second half where Haggerty didn't either make a shot or get to the foul line, right? I think he was pretty much 100% in that regard, either making a shot or in scoring or getting to the foul line, having a chance to do it there. So it was a great second half. And, again, they're going to have a lot of tests like this.
No doubt.
I don't think Missouri's very good. I don't think that's a team that's going to help you a ton come March.
They're not 18 loss.
They're not
in conference
that
play bad.
But they're probably
there's no way, right?
They're 5-13. You know, I mean, I just
one of the bottom.
Yeah, I don't think
basement dweller, bottom feeder.
Yeah, that's not
SEC
going to be a
teams.
win that ages well, in my opinion. I'd be really surprised.
They got interesting pieces, but
they do. You know, it's just amazing how bad guys look once they get out of a Duke uniform. You know, a Duke uniform makes a guy look about 1.5 times better than he actually is.
That's hilarious. Man, but speaking of Haggerty, so now we've seen him 3 times, obviously 2 games that didn't count, and 1 that did, but I think he had 24 against North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, 32 against Alabama, obviously with the 8 fouls, and then 25 in Memphis' first real game against Missouri. Is this Memphis' best offense? Is it to give Haggerty the ball and get the hell out of the way?
Yeah, it is. I was skeptical about him coming into the season. We talked about it. My thinking was, you know, this is a guy that, averaged whatever he averaged at Tulsa, but it's Tulsa. They were a loser. They were never involved in the tournament discussion. And, you know, it's going to look a little different for him when he comes to Memphis and it's a competitive team. But it's kind of been the same for him. It's kind of just been the same thing he was doing at Tulsa. And you can see why he was so successful, you know, because what he does is he's kind of like an agent of chaos a little bit. Like, he just forces defenses to scramble. He gets in the paint, you know, you got to kind of commit to him, foul him, let him, you know, he gets there pretty effortlessly. It's not a very fluid game, I would say. It reminds me a little bit of like, I'm not saying they're the same player at all, but like, it reminds me a little bit of CDR in terms of like, it's just a little awkward.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward, but it works, you know, and it's hard to defend. And so I think, you know, that's his game, and he'll get better. He'll get better as the season goes along.
He's not a bad playmaker either. Like, when defenses do commit to him, he's able to find guys. He had 5 assists in that game.
I love his attitude. I love his approach for a young guy. You know, he's not Kendrick Davis, right? As you go through like great guards that Penny has had, he's not that guy. But man, he can really, I think, I think he can make a case for Player of the Year. You know,
AAC Player of the Year, yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I think he'll definitely be in the mix for that discussion.
Yeah, I mean, he should be the betting favorite in my opinion, based on obviously what we've seen throughout the league
so
far.
I don't think you can bet on that. I mean, if you could,
is that's something you can bet on? Probably. Right?
I don't think so. I don't think they have markets for AAC Player of the Year, but yeah, I don't think it would be a bad. Like, he'd be an underdog to Luxembourg. He would, because he was the preseason favorite.
No, that's fair.
But I mean, he probably plus 250 plus 300, something like that. Not a bad bet.
Not a bad bet.
But we're just making those numbers up.
We are. Yeah, and just, you touched on it a little bit, but not only him and his role, but top to bottom, it just looks like this team fits seamlessly a little bit, right? In terms of guys know who they are. They're not trying to do too much. They know what their job is. Yeah. They know what the assignment is. And for a first game, first real game together, I think that's certainly encouraging when you're seeing that on November 4th.
Yeah. It's one game.
One half, really, if you really want to.
Yeah. You know, we've already been burned before, right? And that was 17 games in. You know, this is your first date.
Yeah.
Right? You don't go home. You don't.
First date after a divorce? What's the analogy? Give me the analogy.
No, I don't want to get into the marital piece of it. Right. You know, it's we're not getting back to history. You know, it's just a brand new man, sure. Eligible bachelor. All right. First date. You don't want to go crazy after the first date. You know, you don't want to blow her phone up. No, you don't want to do that, just say, hey, can I see you again? Yeah. And that's where I'm at. I want to see Memphis again. I want to see him again before I make like any kind of, big sweeping judgments about them.
No doubt.
But in terms of first impressions, it was very good. And at least the second half was. And I'm interested, like I said, in a second date.
Well, lucky for you, the second date is Saturday.
In Vegas.
In Las Vegas.
We're going to
How
Vegas. Man,
what a second date.
This is getting pretty serious.
It's getting spicy. It's getting spicy.
People get married in Vegas.
People do get married in Vegas.
So who knows? Who knows, man? Maybe I'm ready to commit.
Whew. But this date will be against a UNLV team that was picked 5th in the Mountain West, had a couple first place votes. It's been a program, obviously, that since their Run Rebels days has been, down.
Yeah.
But they've picked things back up and seem to be on an upward trajectory. What do you expect to see from Memphis at the Thompson Mack Center on Saturday?
I think it's going to be, a grind for sure. I think it's got the chance to be a little bit of a rock fight between these two teams, even though they both, I think Memphis scored, 83 and UNLV scored 93. So, even though those teams combined for 176, and no, Natalie, you do not have to check that. That is 100% correct. 93 plus 83 equals 176 for all the haters out there. I think it has a chance to be a lower scoring, lower possession game. Could be completely wrong on that, but I just think that's probably how UNLV thinks they can win the game, is by trying to slow it down and, take it. Because like Memphis, it was interesting. Memphis was sort of playing that style to start, right? The first 8 minutes of that game, there were only 16 points scored.
It was such a tough watch, man.
And then
very tough.
And then it just really opened up. And that's where, the second half, same thing. Like Memphis looked a lot more comfortable, trying to get out and go very quickly. So I do think UNLV will try to slow it down. I don't know if they'll be successful, but I just expect that it's a road game in college basketball. UNLV feels good about its season, bringing back some guys from a year ago, got the win over Alabama State to start their year. So I think it'll be a great game. It'll be a great college basketball game with two brands that were a lot more relevant 25 years ago. It's just unfortunately the truth, right? But because if this would have been a game in 1994, you know what I mean? That would have been like one of the best games in college basketball that season.
A little bit more hype.
Little bit.
It wouldn't be on the Mountain West Network, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy? This game's on the Mountain West Network.
That's embarrassing.
How the hell do you get the Mountain West Network?
I think you have to literally pull it up in your browser and you have to watch it on the computer, which I'm not opposed to doing. I do it all the time. Well, I'll actually be in Jamaica.
You're being serious?
No, I'm going to Jamaica.
You're going to Jamaica. Okay.
Do you think they get the Mountain West Network in Jamaica? I'll have to see.
Doubtful.
I'll have to check with the lobby.
Doubtful.
But yeah, no, I'll definitely be following, on my phone and stuff. And I'm just expecting, like I said, a very, very close physical game.
Something we haven't got to, obviously, is the Tyreek Smith situation.
We haven't? I thought we already addressed that, man.
We've beaten
He was supposed to be back. Come on,
that horse has been beaten. But what I will say is, 3 players did foul out, right?
Right.
In that game against Mizzou on Monday.
Yep.
Memphis only has 9 scholarship players available right now. Buna Kibi. Penny told us after the Alabama game that he is still working to become academically eligible. There's a chance that they might redshirt him even after he becomes academically eligible, so he may not see the floor at all, in a real game for Memphis this season. That leaves 9 guys, right? You've got your starters, Tyrese Hunter, PJ Haggerty, Colby Rogers, Nicholas Jourdain, Dane Danger, and then off the bench, all you have is Musa Cisse, Baraka Okogie, Jared Harris, and PJ Carter. Things could get dicey, right? You get guys in foul trouble, guys get dinged, banged up, whatever it may be, especially in the front court when you only got 3 guys in Danger, Jourdain, and Cisse.
Yeah.
Does Memphis need to change anything that it does or plan to do heading into this season now that Tyreek Smith is not in the picture?
I don't think so, man. I know he's depth. I know that, you never like to lose somebody like that, right before the season gets started. But I just don't think he's the kind of player that you're changing your play style.
You're not building around him.
I think you just have to trust that the bigs you have between Dane and Jourdain and Musa will be able to, do enough, stay on the floor and hopefully you get Buna's eligibility sorted out, right? And didn't they bring in another sort of big guy? He's a walk-on though, Yates.
Demarion Yates.
How big is
he? 6'5" though.
Okay, he's not. Okay,
Yeah.
So he's not all right. But yeah, you're going to be riding those 3 guys, and
he's a forward, but he's 6'5".
Right.
Yes.
No, you're not enough size there. So no, it's not ideal, but obviously that situation was not easily
Not
rectifiable.
ideal at all. Yeah, no, 100%.
So, which I think you have more insight on.
Yeah, actually.
Is that posting soon?
Yes, I spoke to what John's talking about for those listening. Is I spoke to Boog Knight, obviously Tyreek Smith's longtime mentor, president of operations at Young Money AAPA Sports
Is that a real
on
thing?
Tuesday. So this is the day after everything unfolded.
So Tuesday.
Yesterday, recording on Wednesday,
Yeah.
November 6th. I spoke to him yesterday on the 5th, and he has obviously
His side.
of the story, alleging that the reason Tyreek came back when he had stepped away initially for those personal days was that Penny, Boog alleges, told him that he'd try to rectify the NIL situation. He tried to come up with whatever money that Tyreek felt he wanted, needed, was owed, whatever it may be. And apparently that money, according to Smith's camp, Tyreek Smith's camp, never came. And the calendar, got closer and closer to the opener. And obviously if Tyreek had played in the opener, he wouldn't be eligible this season at all, right? Yep. So they waited till about November 1st, according to Boog Knight. And then on Saturday, I think it was the 2nd, Tyreek had pretty much made up his mind and texted Penny and said, hey, coach, something along the lines of, sorry it's come to this, but I got to do what's best for my family. Penny was understanding according to Boog Knight, and kind of hit him back and said, family over everything, best of luck. And that's kind of the message that Penny shared post-game as well. I asked him about it. I asked him, what happened. And I feel like maybe a season ago, maybe 2 seasons ago, Penny would have given us something that would have generated a headline, right? Like we'd be rushing to our laptops and tweeting or writing something. Yeah. But I think the coach speak answer that he gave this time, which is pretty much ignored my question and just said he wishes the best for Tyreek, that was the way to go, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think it says a lot that
he's handled this well, is what I'm trying to say.
And he let Tyreek walk, which I think kind of gives you an idea of how he feels about Tyreek, right? It's not like he's pulling out all the stops here to keep him. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of tells you a lot and how he feels about this team. But I would also say that the best Penny years have been years where he doesn't have a 10, 11-man rotation. And I think, I think that's generally true.
Has there been a year where he hasn't had?
Yeah, wasn't that Kendrick year pretty limited rotation?
They started by playing a lot. If you remember, KO was playing, and
yeah, but he got cut out.
And Jonathan Lawson was playing. Like those guys all
got cut out though by the end of it. I mean, it ended up being
100%.
I mean, who were there? Like they didn't really have that much of a bench. Chandler I think was starting. So they bring like Dandridge and one other guy, I can't remember his name, off the bench, but I can't remember if they were.
Might have been Demarie Franklin by the end of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Demarie Franklin, yep. And then you started McCadden.
Yes.
So you started McCadden. Mm-hmm. You brought Franklin and Dandridge off the bench, and that was really your team. And that was in Jaden a little bit.
Yeah.
So you had a 7 to 8 man rotation, and it was Penny's best year. That's what he's going to have this year. It's a 7 to 8 man rotation. So
he's not going to have a choice. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to shed any tears over Tyreek Smith, brother.
What I will say is when Penny was asked about potential additions to this roster, like will he fill that void? Will he fill that gap? They do have, like we discussed, 3 scholarships remaining. They got 9 available, 10 total, which leaves 3 vacancies. Penny kind of laughed when he was presented with the question, because he's always looking, right? Like when is this guy not looking to add talent or add a player or whoever? At the 11th hour, sometimes after. Last year we saw them saw the Tigers add Naquan Tomlin like December 12th, 13th.
Yep.
That worked out well from an on-the-court standpoint. Was it perfect behind the scenes in terms of chemistry and locker room and all that kind of stuff? Maybe not, but the production, you take that any day, right? Whatever you average, 14 points, 8 rebounds, whatever it may be. It's hard to go out and find another Tomlin, but do you think an addition would be wise? I mean, in a month,
if they need it. Like, let's see.
I guess we'll see how this plays out.
I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? You'll know if they need it or not. So
I'll know.
I wouldn't. You're there every day, man.
Yes, sir.
I mean, Sweet 16 or bust. So I think you take the month to evaluate it, and then kind of go from there. If you're struggling and you need something, I'm sure Penny will definitely add it. He's shown he's not afraid to do that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I guess that next phase of this evaluation process will take place in Vegas. Man, I'm excited. I'm getting there Friday afternoon, so I'll have a little bit of free time.
Love it, man.
Man, I'll try to find something to do out there, I'm sure.
Oh, you'll find something to do out there. That's the beauty about Vegas. That's what Natalie was telling me. I've never been to Vegas. She was just telling me how there's so much to do. Again, I've never been out there, so I don't know. But maybe
Natalie has never been to Vegas.
Oh, sorry, that's different. No, I've been out there more times than I'd like to admit. I'm overdue, really. So no, what I can
come with, man.
No. I'll be in Jamaica, man.
Okay.
I'm like choosing Jamaica this time. But what I can tell you definitively, without a shadow of a doubt, is that you will find something to do.
I'm sure I will. I'm confident.
You'll find something to do.
But yeah, that's all the time we have for Tigers Talk, Vegas Talk, and all of that. Thanks for listening, and y'all can read my work, John Martin's work, and Frank Bonner's work at dailymemphian.com. We will catch y'all next week.